Welcome everybody who's here. So excited about today's word. It's going to keep your hope alive. It's going to excite you. It's going to refresh you.
Father, I thank you that the entrance of your word brings light and it gives understanding to the simple. I thank you that I have the tongue of the land and I have a word in season for everyone who's watching this video now live and those who are going to watch it after. I thank you that your word will bring forth light. It will give us revelation. It will cause us to enjoy you more, to discover your goodness, your greatness, your good intentions towards us. Thank you, Lord, that your word brings life. It is our life. Thank you that your word is spirit and it is our life. Thank you that we will receive abundantly from you. Thank you, Lord. We bless you. We glorify you. In Jesus' mighty name, I pray. Amen. Precious, I see you. Gustavus, Mr. Gustavus, I see you. Thank you for coming. Guys, so today, let me start this way. Oh, by the way, anyway, since no one has complained, I was going to tell me if the sound is clear, what, blah, 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 but clearly no one has complained, so it's clear. So I'll take it that all is well. You can hear me, you can see me. Okay, let's start. Now, last week, I have, not last week only, but during the whole lockdown season, I have had a number of assignments to engage in. Different books, different work, do you understand? Stretching.com. And now, recently, last week particularly, I have had an assignment that has really stretched my mind regarding business and growing in that aspect. And what happened is that I got the assignment during the week, and over the weekend, I think I got it about Thursday, and then yes, I got it on Thursday, and then Saturday is when I had really planned to do the assignment, right? And then what happens is I just get a creep of fear. Fear, F-E-A-R. Fear. And when I got this thing of fear, do you know what happened? I got paralyzed. I was like, no, I can't do this. No, this assignment is too big. No, this is too big. Will I be able to accomplish all these things? And so I'm part of a class called School of Ministry that happens on Friday. I had work to do and be ready on Friday. And then I had to do these assignments. Basically, fear paralyzed me. Then I remembered 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. Yes. For God has not given us a spirit of fear. As in, the spirit of fear is not from God. If you have experienced fear, and the thing is, fear usually comes when the assignment ahead of you is greater than a small assignment. Like, do you understand? And every single person who's watching today, every single person who's watching, after God has called you for such a big purpose and plan and design thing. Now, fear usually creeps up when the assignment seems to be bigger than my abilities. Do you understand? And so what happened is, I started meditating on 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. God has not given you, Solome, a spirit of fear, but one of power and of love and of a sound mind. God has not given me a spirit of fear. So if I grew a spirit, when you experience fear, today I want you to know that fear is not from God. Do you know how you detest? I don't even know how to say, like, if rats came to your house, like, you won't say, oh my God, okay, this is God has sent me rats. Like, do you know what you're going to do? You're going to call the fumigators, because rats do not belong to your house. So fear is not your portion. So I'm going to explain to you guys. And so what did I do? I started going through just conversations with God about fear. This thing called fear. What's the story here? And then I was reading in the book of Joshua, which is a book that I have been reading it, and I started to notice something. I noticed that when it came to possession for the Israelites as they were possessing the promise, and remember that Joshua took over from Moses, right? Moses led them out of Egypt. He led them up to some point, and then Joshua took after Moses. And when it came to possession, God continually addressed fear. And his constant address was a command not to fear. So friends, today I'm telling you that the thing about fear, because I've been thinking a lot about it, I realized that one of the things that have hindered me from chasing fear away is the deception that fear just comes upon me. I can't do anything about it. I have to wait for the fear to go. And yet I'm reading in Joshua and I'm seeing that God is commanding them not to fear. You see, guys, I kept thinking about a child and a parent. When you're a parent and you command your child not to get out of the house, you're not saying, okay, if you feel like getting out of the house, really perhaps you shouldn't get out of the house. No, when you said do not get out of the house, what do you mean? You mean do not get out of the house. It's a command. It is, do not do it. When you find on a wall, when you go to a mall and they're painting the walls and say do not touch, they're not saying, like, are you understanding me? They're not asking you how you feel about it. When you tell your child do not get out of the house, you're not asking them, you're telling them to not. And then I realized that when God was addressing fear to the Israelites as they were possessing land, and I want you to think about it this way, that God has called you to take certain territories in your life, to start certain businesses, to start certain organizations, to start doing certain things, and that is what I want you to go, the God-ordained purpose that God has planned for you. So I want you to think of that as the possession you're going into to do these things that God has called you to do, to be the best mother, or what? To disciple parents, or to do all those great things that God has called you to do. I want you to think of it as that. When it comes to possession, the command is not to fear. It's not a request. Friends, today I want to tell you that fear, I want you to detest fear. When fear comes, when the spirit of fear comes upon you, you refuse. You don't wait for it to lift off as I used to do. Like, I'm scared now, I can't do anything about it. And I'm going to explain what I mean. I want you to look at this. Joshua chapter 1 verse 9, it says, have I not commanded you? Commanded you. Joshua. So I'm going to be in Joshua, so you can open your Bible to Joshua. We're going to linger in a number of verses around Joshua. This is chapter 1 verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid. It's not saying, please may you not be afraid. Maybe perhaps, no, do not. So what happens is when fear comes upon me, I say, no, I refuse to fear. I speak back to fear. I don't say, oh, when the lifting goes, when the feeling goes, it will go, I will stop fearing. No. I have been commanded not to fear. So, let me not go ahead of myself. Look at Joshua chapter 8, verse 1. Now, the Lord said to Joshua, what did he say? Do not be afraid. There is no point where God said, if you feel like it, maybe, okay, these giants are going to come. But, okay, the thing is, okay, I'm kindly asking you, maybe, I'm just begging you, just don't be afraid. No. Child of God, do not participate. When fear come, it may come, and I'm going to show you, God anticipated that you'll see certain things and you will be forced to fear. Now here's the thing. The first strategy is going to be that you do not fear. Listen, this is Joshua chapter 8 verse 1. Do not be afraid nor dismayed. Take all the people of war with you and arise and go to Ai. See, I have given into your hand the king of Ai, his people. Then I want you to look at Joshua chapter 10 verse 7 to 8. Joshua chapter 10 verse 7 to 8. So Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all his people of war with him and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, listen to what the Lord said to Joshua, do not fear them, for I have delivered them into your hand. Do not fear them. Not please, may you kindly not. No. Guys, God has given you an idea for businesses. God has given you an idea for your marriage. God has given you, do not fear. I have delivered them. He has done the work. Joshua chapter 11 verse 6. But the Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid. I want to emphasize the fact that Jesus was giving them a command not to be afraid. It wasn't a request, because fear, I'm going to show you ahead that fear is the first strategy for battle. Before you stand still and all those things, I'm going to show you. Now, I asked myself a question. Why didn't the Lord just give the Israelites the land without commanding them not to fear? Because, God had already made a promise to them. Don't you ever think, like, okay, you already promised me that you're going to give me victory. Just chill. Whatever I'm feeling, allow me to feel it. You just give me the victory. Do you understand? And God is like, no. I have to partner with you. Now, for me to partner with you, I need you to not participate with fear. Because fear is the first derailer from participating with God. Because the thing is, guys, God made a promise to Israel to possess, and he had a plan for partnership. He was doing the fighting, and in fact, he had won the battles. Now, the thing is, in order for them to partner with him, they needed to not fear. Walking in obedience. So here's the thing. The first thing he talked about is refuse to fear. The second thing is walking in obedience to the instruction that God has given you. The thing that's going to enable you to walk in obedience is, first of all, recognize, because when you stop fear, you're saying, God, I'm choosing to partner with what you have said about this situation. Let me show you. you see, the thing is, every time God asked Joshua not to fear, he gave him a promise. Have you noticed in the verses I was reading before? He said, do not fear, I am with you. Do not fear, I have given you. Do not fear, I will deliver them. Every time you look at the part of do not fear, God has. So what I want to ask you today, what has God told you about that situation? You're starting this multi-million-dollar business, and God is saying, do not fear, I am bringing divine connections for your business. Do not fear, I have given you the mind of Christ. So what promise are you standing on that God has given you that you're going to use to resist fear, to refuse fear in your life? What promise are you standing on? Because every time he told them do not fear, he told them the reason why. Because it's like a child, you tell them don't jump over that, or don't jump over 10 steps. Why? Because you fall down and get hurt. And so God is like, guys, I know the fear is coming, but do not fear. And so your question would be, why shouldn't I fear? I have a promise. So what promise has God given you? And that's why we need to keep the promises of God continuously before our eyes. Because when it comes to fear, we reject fear by standing on the promise that God has given us. Do not fear, I will deliver you like I delivered you in Egypt. Do not fear, I have given you this land. Do not fear, I have caused people to come in alignment for your divine purpose. Do not fear, I love you. So what purpose has God given you? Do you understand? So you're not just not fearing because, wow, it's a good thing not to do, but you have a reason why. And what is your reason? Why? Look here. I realized, guys, and I wrote it this way. I wrote it this way. The first order of business when it comes to partnering with God in taking possession is to stop fear. I'll say that again. The first order of business when it comes to partnering with God in taking possession of whatever God has called you to, the first order of business is to stop fear. Fear, the spirit of fear is not from God. He has not given you a spirit of fear. So when you sense fear, you refuse. You actively refuse. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 20 verse 1 to 4. I got so interested in this verse. Deuteronomy chapter 20. I'm going in many spaces because I want to paint this picture and I want you to see this thing that fear is the first battle strategy. Deuteronomy chapter 20 from verse 1 to 4. It says, when you go out to battle against your enemies, listen to this, and see horses and chariots and people numerous than you, do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. Who brought you up from the land of Egypt? I continue. So it shall be when you are on the verge of battle, that the priest shall approach to speak to the people, and he shall say, hear, O house of Israel. Listen, guys, listen to the picture here. This Deuteronomy, there was a second reading of the law before the Israelites went to possess. And here they were telling them, this is how you're going to do warfare. That when you're on the verge of battle, the high priest is going to come in front of you, O Israel, and he's going to say, today you're on the verge of battle with your enemy. Listen, do not let your heart faint. Do not be afraid and do not tremble or be terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies. Can you imagine that in this promised land, guys, where we have been called to take territory, to multiply, be fruitful and dominate, the first order of business is not, the high priest didn't say today you're on the verge of battle, pull out your swords and start praying in tongues, and I don't know, do you understand? Like, the first order of business, before you start getting your battle things organized, before you start, I don't know what, doing exercise and organizing your muscles for battle, the first order of business is to refuse fear. When it comes to doing the thing that God has called you to do, you guys, you have to get aggressive with fear, because that spirit is not from God, period. It's not from God. He says the first order of business is do not let your heart faint, do not be afraid, and do not tremble or be terrified. For the Lord your God is he who goes with you, and he will fight for you against your enemies. And again, the point that I made earlier comes back. He gave them the reason why. He told them, because the Lord your God who goes with you, it's him who fights for you, and he's the one who will fight against your enemies to save you. Deuteronomy chapter 20 from verse 1 to 4. Go and look at it. He gave them a reason why. And the thing is, he says, because the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. You see, the thing is, what I noticed and realized is that when I say, when you say, let me it again. The Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies. It came to mind that what the high priest was basically telling the Israelites is, know this God. Know the character of this God who is going ahead of you to fight for you. So guess what, guys? One of the strategies for refusing fear is to know the character of our Father. How are we going to know the character of our Father? Through the word of God, keeping it in front of our eyes. Because he said, you have to know the Lord. That guy is the one. But then, how will I be confident in this Lord? It is because I know the character of that God. Do you understand? It's like the example, I've heard of this story. I'm sure many of us here may have heard it before. That talks about a boy who was traveling on a plane. The father was the pilot. The father of the child was the pilot. And then the plane faced a lot of turbulence. And then the kid was about chilling. I don't know. The kid was basically distracted. And everyone around the child was quite engaged in the turbulence, wearing oxygen masks, blah, blah, blah. And then someone asked this child, but weren't you afraid? And the child said, my dad is the pilot. Like, do you understand? No, that Lord. Do you understand? So, because of the boy's understanding of the character of the pilot, he could not afford to fear. So, one of the ways we expel fear is by digging, who is this God who I'm trusting? Who is this God who I'm trusting? The more I know the God I'm trusting, the easier it's going to be for me to expel fear. So don't really battle alone or trying to fear, no, go away. No, he's like, no. But this God who I'm trusting, what has he done? What kind of God is he? What miracles has he performed? Because that's what he was telling them, these guys. He was telling them, the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight against your enemies to save you. Do you have an idea of the guy who's on your team today, you guys, this morning? Do you have an idea of the God who's on your team? Do you know? The more you know, the easier it's going to be to expel fear. Because like, I know the God who God has said, okay. Do you understand? So knowing the character of God is going to help you to expel fear. I'll say it again, the first order of business when it comes to partnering with God in taking possession is to stop fear. Fear causes paralysis. Fear makes you paralyzed. Fear makes you paralyzed. The first order of business is to refuse to fear. Now, paralysis is a state of powerlessness or an incapacity to act. I'm going to ask you guys, when you fear, do you feel excited to do something? No, on the contrary, you feel like you have no capacity to do that thing. So that's why that spirit is not from God, because it's not enabling you, it is disabling you from accomplishing what God has called you to accomplish. Does that make sense? So it cannot be from God, because God is telling you you're going to be fruitful and multiply, and then this deceptive spirit is coming and telling you that, oh boy, you can't do it, you're not qualified. It cannot be from God. That's why I say, I have not given you a spirit of fear. So when you see fear, you reject it, you refuse. No, that one is not from God. I refuse it. I understand it. Fear causes paralysis. It doesn't cause you to have the, when you're fearful, you don't feel like, oh God, I have the capacity to do. When you sound like you don't feel like, oh God, I have the capacity to do. I feel like, oh my goodness. No. What fear does is that it just it makes you contract. That's not what fear does. That's not what fear does. I kept thinking, people, today you must become aggressive about fear. Because I had a lie in my mind. There was a lie that was in my mind that I used to have. That fear, it comes and then it goes by itself. And today I'm telling you, no. You intentionally engage and say, no. You speak back. No, I have the mind of Christ. No, I am qualified to do everything that God has called me to do. I am equal to the task that God has given me. I have the mind of Christ. God ordained these works before me beforehand that I should walk in them. This is good works. God has given me a wise mind. You speak back and refuse. You don't just say, oh, wow. Oh, no. Fear. Now, let me tell you how. One of the things that I want to engage with today, I want to talk about this thing called phobia. Have you heard of this thing called phobia? I've realized that the thing about phobia is that it makes you think that you cannot help it. I'll talk about myself. One of the phobias that I used to have was the fear of heights. Now, it almost felt prestigious, I'm telling you, to talk about how you have a phobia. In fact, I used to feel like, in fact, if you don't have a phobia, really, you cook phobias left, right, and center. I don't know if somebody here is with me. But the thing is, I realized that, okay, I can actually stop this, because maybe I might have been born with a fear of phobia or something of heights, but I was born again a new creature. If any man is in Christ, he is a new creation. All things have passed away, including fear for heights. And all things have become new. And now all these new things, they are of God. Do you realize? Because when you have the mind that, oh my God, because you see what I used to think is that I cannot help not fearing heights. But then I had to start renewing my mind to no, this is not my portion. I am not created to be afraid. Now, question is, do I still get fears when I approach high places? Yes, but do I speak it and talk about how I fear heights? No. In fact, what do? I approach every single day. I conquer more and more and more because I'm like, no. Because the thing with phobia, if you think that you have a phobia, you'll not be able to help it. You'll not be able to help it. You'll be like, that's how I am. That's how I am wired. And yet God is saying, no, that thing is it's a spirit of fear, and you have not been given a spirit of fear. So if you agree with the phobia and really become very intimate with it and declare that it is your personal phobia, guess what? You definitely will not have capacity to repel it and to refuse it. So what do? I no longer confess. And now I've shared it just because I'm sharing to explain myself. But I no longer go around, oh my God, I fear heights so much. Why? Because that means I'm partnering with the spirit of fear so much. And in fact, it manifests in the fear of heights. No. Everything fear is not from God. Everything fear is not from God. It is not from God. And the day you understand it is the day you start to fight and refuse it. The day you say, no, I am not born like this. I am born like, okay, I may have been born like this, but I was born again, new and changed, and all things are of God. God doesn't have phobia. Do you understand, you guys? We don't have anything fear-related. You have to hate. You have to reject. You have to say, no, I have not been given the spirit of fear. Do you understand? And you don't refuse some and then you allow others. No. Guys, there's a time I got stuck in a lift. Actually, very recently here in February, I got stuck in a lift. Guys, I mean, I've had all those stories of getting stuck. Look, I never imagined I could ever get stuck in a lift. Did all those fears come? Yes. But guess what I did? I started speaking. No, I am not going to get stuck in this lift forever. The lift won't fall down. I'm going to receive help in the shortest time possible. I am refusing. Do you understand? The guy is working to help me get out of the lift. Do you understand? Like, instead of, oh my God, no. Me naturally, closed spaces, like you re-own it and you re-own it how you're claustrophobic. No. Will the fear still come? Yes, but because you have decided that you will not participate, you start making progress towards eliminating. So guys, today I'm just here to tell you, do not tolerate fear. Do not entertain. And in what are you afraid of? Do not. It's not the spirit of God. The spirit that you have received is of power and of love and of a sound mind. The spirit you have received is a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. The spirit you have received is a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. You guys, do not tolerate fear. To tolerate is to allow or to be done without something to be done without what? Prohibition. Do not tolerate. Tolerate is, I can't help it. And that's, you guys, I'm sharing this one because it was a deep one for me. I used to think that fear, it comes and then it goes when it's ready. When it's ready to go, it goes. No. Thinking that I do not have the capacity to reject it. And guess what? In this past week, I shared the story at the beginning that I had fear in accomplishing the task that I had to do. I want you to know that in one afternoon of speaking and refusing, the good thing lifted and I did all the things I was supposed to do. Why? Because I realized, oh my God, no, this thing, I have to refuse it. You don't participate and say, oh, when the fear goes, it will go. Boy, guys, our minds must get renewed. Our minds must get, do you understand? You get to a point where, no. Do you feel the things? Yes. But do you allow them? No. Do you feel the things? Yes. But do you allow them? No. As in you don't allow. You guys, I'm about to finish. Oh, good. I'm really about to finish. This is the last thing. I have a few minutes. Exodus chapter 14 from verse 10 to 13. Exodus chapter 14 from verse 10 to 13. Exodus chapter 14 from verse 10 to 13. I want to go there briefly and I show you something. Now, this portion of Exodus chapter 10 from verse 10 to 13. Do you know that part where the Israelites had come out of Egypt? And they were about to cross the Jordan. That's the portion. Now, in that portion, the Egyptians, God has hardened the heart of Pharaoh and they started chasing him. Then, in front of you, you're seeing this good river Jordan. That's the point where they were. Now let's read. Exodus chapter 14 from verse 10 to 13. And when Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. So they were afraid, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Now I want you to realize, okay, let me continue before I explain. Then they say to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, you have taken us. Then they complained basically. Now I want to go to verse 13. And Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. That's the first thing he said. I mean, some of us know that scripture. You begin from the part of stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. The Lord will fight for you and you hold your peace. Is that familiar? Guess where it starts? It begins with, do not be afraid. That's the first order of business. Do not be afraid. Exodus 14, 10, 13. Thank you, Pat, for sharing it. Moses said to the people, what was the first? Before you stand still and see those very mighty things, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see no more forever. The Lord will fight for you and you hold your peace. Guess the first few words that Moses tells those guys? Stop the fear. Stop the fear. Stop the fear. And guess what, guys? The fear came when they looked up and saw the Egyptians. Did you see it in verse 10? That the children of Israel lifted their eyes and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. So sometimes you will see things. And in fact, if you go back to the Deuteronomy chapter, which I told you, this is what God had. This was the instruction they had. Chapter Deuteronomy 20. Did you see it said? From Deuteronomy 20 verse 1, said, when you go out to battle against your enemies and you see horses and chariots and people numerous than you. So guess what? You may see sometimes the situation around you is like, like clearly, I don't have the capacity. Clearly, those guys are bigger than me. Clearly, what? The first order of business, in order for me to partner with you and you see the victory, is to not be afraid. Think about it, you guys. We always talk about this story of Jericho. And the Jericho walls were high. These guys had been locked out. They had nowhere to pass. And then God said, I'll give you victory. Now the thing is, they had to not fear in order for them to walk in obedience and run around that wall. They're like, you know what? No. The first thing I want you to do is to partner with me and allow not to fear. Because I have given you the victory. You people, I'm going to say this statement again. The first order of business, when it comes to partnering with God in taking possession wherever he has called you, is to stop the fear. You refuse the fear. So, I'm still talking about the Israelites. God knows that God knows that what we see and hear may affect our response. Yes, and even then he dictates the response. He says, do not fear. He said, the Israelites could see those guys coming at them. They knew, they had been slaves for 100 years. They knew those guys were mightier than them. And guess what? Before he told them to stand still, before he told them the Lord will fight for you, before he told them all those good promises, what was the first thing he told them? Do not fear. Today I'm here to tell you. Guess what I'm here to tell you? Do not fear. Stop the fear. Do not participate with fear. Fear is not part of you. It doesn't just come, you can't help it. No, you can speak back because you are aware that it's not from God. Are we together? Are we together? I will end with 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. God has not given you a spirit of fear. For God has, in fact, if someone can just put it up for me there. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. You guys, if someone has not given you something, if God has not given you something, then it's the devil, it's from the devil and it's not your portion. Like, do you get? Stop the fear. The first step in partnering with God in order to possess is to refuse to fear. You go and read the book of Joshua. Thank you, Pia. The first order of business, before you stand still and see the salvation, before you stand and the Lord fights for you and you hold your peace, the first order of business to accomplish the goal that God has called you is to stop the fear. Do not be afraid. Because when you're not afraid, then I will be able to, as in, do you understand it? Then because the thing is, Kenneth Copeland says, a fear tolerated is faith contaminated. I think it's Brother Kenneth or Brother Jesse Duplantis. I'm not sure, one of the two. But when you tolerate fear, you contaminate your faith. And that's why God says, stop the fear. As soon as you stop the the fear. Then you can stand still and see my salvation. Then you can go to battle. Do you understand? So stop the fear is step one. I've finished.